Namaskar and welcome to this exciting episode of Sathology Debunking Mythology.
Namaskar.
And we have a wonderful guest today. You have seen on the video last time as well. And today we are going to talk about one of the greatest kings of modern times in India, who has been an inspiration to many people. Even today, many political careers have started and finished on his name. Extremely popular in Southeast Asia and a great source of inspiration to many nationalistic and patriotic people in India. So, without delay, let us welcome Sri Uday Mahurkarji.
Thank you.
So, Udayji, this Shivaji Maharaj is a legend in India. So, my first question to you is, what is the origin of the word Shivaji?
There are two different versions. One is that he was named after Shivai Devi. His mother had kept what you call a mannat, what you call a prayer, where she asked for a good son from Shivai Devi, and a local goddess, and that's how he was named Shivaji. That is one. And second is that he was named Shivaji because of Lord Shiva. So there are two different versions. But the earlier one is more believed by most, that his mother had kept a mannat, had made a prayer to Shivai Devi, a local goddess, and she blessed her with such a great son.
So Shivaji Maharaj.
There is something.
Yes.
I would like to add something here.
Yes,
when
please.
you speak about Shivaji's mother, Jijabai, Shivaji was crowned as king, independent king, in 1674. And she died just 12 days after that. She just lived to see her son reach the summit of human greatness. And the great historian Jaduna Sarkar has compared this with a very old a king of the same age, born 1500 years from now, which is about a difference between him and Shivaji would be 1200 years maybe, or 1100 years. His name was Gautami Putra Satkarni. Gautami Putra Satkarni his mother's name was Gautami, and he was so devoted to his mother that, he was one of the greatest kings of South India 1500 years ago. And he conquered several rulers of that time. He constructed great buildings, and he's considered to be a great ruler. But he was so devoted to his wife that he was known as Gautami Putra Satkarni. His mother's name was linked to his name. So same was the relationship between Shivaji and his mother, Jijabai.
No, it is said that when Jijabai was bringing him up, she taught him three main books: Gita, Mahabharata, and Ramayana. Is that true?
That is absolutely true.
Yes.
Absolutely true. Absolutely. There is evidence available in several books. And actually, Shivaji did not undergo formal education, But his main educator was his mother, who taught him through these three books. These three books had a great impact on him. Because Mahabharata taught him Krishna Niti, which later on came to be known as Chanakya Riti, And that was a great asset to him, because Shivaji is today known in India as a great warrior. But that is only half introduction of Shivaji. Shivaji was a great, diplomat, great practitioner of Chanakya Niti, Krishna Niti, and at the same time, a great administrator. So what Shivaji is known today in India it is only his half introduction, maybe one third. He was a great fighter, renowned conqueror. He was a great practitioner of what you call, again I tell you, diplomacy in the realm of Chanakya Niti and Krishna Niti, and he was a great administrator. So that is the full introduction of Shivaji.
No, I'm glad you clarified that, because uh, he built a huge empire, and you were giving an idea before. What was the length of the empire? Like almost.
You see, this is again my own find. You see, most historians have failed to appreciate this point. You see, the length of his kingdom was 1600 kilometers, would say about 1000 miles. Now, if you read about Krishna Dev Rai, another great ruler of South India, who is remembered for his bravery, for his generalship, for his benevolence, he is called an emperor. Secondly, this length, I'll tell you how big is his length. You see, those Muslim invaders who enslaved India all came from South Asia, from places like Kabul, Ghazni, Ghur. Muhammad Ghori came from, who started Muslim rule in India. Muhammad Ghori, he came from Ghur. Muhammad Ghazni came from Ghazni. Babur was first in Samarkand, then in Kabul. Now, all these invaders are hero worshipped by a section of Indian historians, saying that they were great, they had great enterprise, which Indians did not have. But that is wrong. The distance between Kabul and Delhi is 1300 kilometers. The distance between Ghur and Delhi, Ghazni and Delhi, is less than 1600 kilometers, which was the length of Shivaji's kingdom when he died. So this leads me to another point, which is that Indians lack a sense of history. I mean, they have not been able to what you call, they have not been able to appreciate their great man as the way they should have, because Shivaji has been described by Jadura Sarkar as the greatest constructive genius of medieval India. When you say medieval India, it starts from the day Hindus lost power to Muslims in 1192 till the advent of British. So for a span of almost 600 years, Jadura Sarkar says he is the greatest constructive genius of that period. Yeah.
No. So you mentioned some important things that Indians have lost the sense of history, because I think they have not been told the real history, and so we see that the history of India has been not told correctly to most of them. The character of Shivaji Maharaj, despite being all the the things which have been told, and you said it so nicely, that invaders can come to India, but how can Indians go to that area? Like it's sort of a one-way street, and just trying to show that Hindus don't have the courage. And this can be asked today also. Only Pakistan sends terrorists. Why are we not sending anything from here to there? It's the same logic over there.
No, my point is more. We would want to aid Pakistan by sending terrorists. But at least we can think of taking action against those who are fomenting terrorism in this country.
No,
there are two or three people in
by sending
Pakistan
terrorists.
who are fomenting terrorism in this country. They are well known, and still, we are hesitant in taking action against them.
No,
That is my point. We don't want
that's
to
what-
aid Pakistan.
No,
We don't want to become, and that was the example set by Shivaji. Shivaji's rise was because of the the vision to overcome the invaders and to free India from the clutches of their what you call fanatical rule. Correct? But then he did not himself become a fanatic.
That's right.
He in his kingdom, wherever he conquered a new area, there was total religious freedom. Even the Quran was respected. So he fought against radical Muslims, not against Muslim community as a whole.
That is the history, and what I meant really was that if terrorists, Pakistan can send terrorists here, why not we send our regular soldiers into that country? Because ultimately Mahabharat history is in today's Pakistan. Mahabharat was spoken in Takshila by Vaishampayan, and Ramayana, Bharat Maharaj, the capital was that area, Takshila, northwest Pakistan, which is the entire
No,
land.
there has been a big. I would like to add something here. Aditi, there has been a big change in the last 6 years. What you are saying, is true about how things stood earlier. But there has been a change in the last 6-7 years. Pakistan has got a taste of its own medicine in some sense, not through terrorism. So there is a big change. The way we attacked their terrorist hideout after the Pulwama attack in 2018 was a very good example. Was a very good example of 2019, I suppose. Yeah, was a very good example of how India can react now against Pakistan. Yeah.
Shivaji Maharaj was one of the first kings to realize that do not exchange your daughters and daughter-in-laws in exchange for peace, like the other Rajput kings used to do. They used to marry off their daughters to Muslims and invaders, mostly Muslim invaders, and try to buy peace so that they are safe. But Shivaji Maharaj set one of the rules that never exchange their daughters or in.
Aditi, I have a slightly different take on this,
Uh-huh.
which is very radically different from how people look at it. You see, this practice of giving their daughters to Muslims, to Mughals rather, particularly Mughals, it started from the period of Akbar. Now let us understand who was Akbar. You see, we might give Akbar, Akbar deserves some place in Indian history, some positive place. The reason is that the 350 years before Akbar was full of atrocities on Hindus. All these roads which are named in Delhi after Tughlaq, Lodi, Tughlaq, Lodi, Khilji, all these rulers of Sultanate period, a period of 334 years. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All this, the Mughal period is preceded by Sultanate period, in which about 5-6 dynasties ruled. Not a single ruler of that period was benevolent or good to Hindus. Each and every ruler was a fanatic. He committed untold atrocities on the local Hindu population. So Akbar was the first ruler, Muslim ruler, who tried to extend a hand of friendship towards the Hindus, and he put an end to those atrocities. He put an end to that tax called jizya, which was being extracted from Hindus by Muslim rulers under the Sharia. So he was the first ruler not to follow Sharia. So Akbar, you have to give that much credit. Now, this practice of giving daughters to Mughals began only with the advent of Akbar, not before that. Now, you should understand the situation of the Hindus. Rajput rulers, Rajput rulers fought Muslim fanaticism for 350 years. In North India, where most of the North India is in plains, they did not have the cover of Sahyadri ranges, the hill ranges, except Mewar. All the area where the Rajputs fought Muslims for 350 years to defend their freedom was all plains, And Indians, as always, were very weak in artillery. Muslims were very good in artillery, So a stage came where they were also exhausted, and here was a ruler who was extending a hand of friendship to them. I am not justifying this whole practice of giving their daughters to, but earlier the women used to be abducted. For example, a ruler called Rana Kshetra Singh. Kshetra Singh, he died defending 124 Rajput ladies who were abducted by a Muslim ruler, you know. This was in the, I think, in the 14th century. So now there was a situation where they were secure, they were respected, their religion was respected, there was an end to temple breaking. So this whole practice of Rajput giving their daughters to Mughals has to be seen in a special light. I thought it would be unfair to say that they were giving their daughters to buy peace. You get my point? And who knows? Because Hindus never take girls from other religion. They're totally opposed. Maybe Akbar would have given a Mughal daughter to them, you know. They were not prepared to accept any Muslim blood, you know. You get my point? Because Hindus believed in purity of blood at that time. So to see Rajput, this practice of giving Rajputs, giving their daughters to Muslims should be seen in this special light, you know. I am of that opinion. Yes, Shivaji, of course, was a absolutely different person, you know. I mean, giving daughter to a Muslim is a different matter, but he taught, he changed the rules of the game, you know. Till Shivaji came, for about, the Muslim rule was there for almost 450 years till Shivaji came, you know. And Hindus are defending themselves all the while. They were not attacking. It was Shivaji who taught that attack is the best form of defense. When Surat was to be attacked by Shivaji, Surat, the biggest business mart of Mughal Empire on the western coast in Gujarat, that time his generals asked him, Maharaj, this is very far, how will we go? He said, if this Turks, referring to Muslim invaders, he said, if these Turks can come from Central Asia, or such, you know, from such a distance, we can't go and attack Surat. What kind of thing? Rules of the game will have to be changed now. Now we will attack and they will defend. That is what he told his generals. Yeah.
No, you're right. What I meant to say was that the Shivaji Maharaj did play a very good role in this thing, but at the same time, many of the Akbar's qualities have been exaggerated to a large extent. Like, for example, Babur shipped 60,000 women from Panchanad. At that time, it was not known as Punjab, it was Panchanad. Exported them to Syria. And from Kabul, almost 90,000 women who were mostly Hindu were sent to Syria. That is a recorded history. Now, with Akbar, son of Babur, doing some charity. Grandson.
Grandson of Babur, yeah.
Yeah, and then Akbar maintaining a harem of 5,000 women, mostly Hindu, as a sign of humiliation for Hindus. So therefore, I think Akbar is not taken in a good light today in the history, because I think he was.
I beg to somewhat differ. I am not defending Akbar, but I beg to slightly differ, you know, because I believe in unadulterated history, you know. A person who had brought an end to atrocities against Hindus, who tried to bring an end, who stopped temple destruction, who withdrew the jizya tax. I think she has to be given some marks. If I may give him maybe 70 out of 60 out of 100, but he deserves at least 50 out of 100. You know.
Yeah. Now jizya.
You have to see the history preceding Akbar. Then and then you can know the value of Akbar.
Yeah. So jizya tax started from Persia. So when the Islam invaded Persia, that's time a new version of Islam came in called is called Azam-e-Islam, and which was a Persian version of Islam, which was more brutal than the original Islam, to be very mild over there. Now, in that particular mode of Islam, jizya tax was invented, and jizya tax became mostly for if you're not a Muslim, then you have to pay a tax. If you're a
To
Muslim, you don't
remain
have.
to follow your religion. The tax to follow your religion. If you
Correct,
want to exempt yourself from the tax, it was a strategy to Islamize
correct.
non-Muslims. If they don't want to pay the tax, then become Muslim. Something like that.
And nowadays, the same thing is going on in terms of education. The Muslim girls are given more money in some parts of India by state governments, and where Hindu girls are not given anything. Is that similar? You can make any
No, I
comparison?
have no idea, but it is the fact that something which is most unfortunate for this country is that we agreed to the partition of our motherland to satisfy the demand of a section of Muslims that they wanted a separate Islamic nation. And thereafter, we continued to follow pro-Muslim policies in this country. I think this is the greatest, I would say, irony, and I would say a greatest injustice to the local population, to the Hindus. If you have given Muslims a separate country by dividing your own motherland, then why should you have special privileges for Muslims? Veer Savarkar was fighting for equal treatment. He was not fighting for special rights for Hindus.
Correct.
Veer Savarkar, who has been portrayed such a wrong manner by Indian historians, by a section of politicians also. Veer Savarkar was fighting for equal treatment. He was saying that no special treatment to anybody, including Muslims.
That's right.
So it was a fight for equal treatment, not fight for Hindus.
So if you can, so Shivaji Maharaj built the country of Vietnam, the North Vietnam, when they're fighting against South Vietnam, and they used Shivaji Maharaj's techniques to defeat a mighty US army in full force. Despite US army used depleted nuclear weapons and everything else they could use whatever they could use, they used that. And perhaps it is said it was more brutal campaign by the American military than even World War II in such a small stretch of land. And they got defeated through guerrilla tactics. And when the Vietnamese Congress, when they visited India, they thanked Shivaji Maharaj. And there is in the Ho Chi Minh City, even today, Shivaji Maharaj statue is there. Shivaji Maharaj has a very strong influence on that side also. So isn't that a teaching worth valid to be taught in Indian schools? That this is what
It should
Shivaji
be.
Maharaj.
It should be. Shivaji has been depicted just as a great warrior. That's all.
Yeah.
Shivaji, yes, Shivaji. I am sometimes, I'm a Maratha by caste. I belong to the same caste as Shivaji. The people might feel that I am slightly biased, but I think that Shivaji might be qualified as the greatest Indian of 1,000 years. He started. He restarted Navy. The tradition of Navy had died down with the end of Chola dynasty in the 12th century. He started Navy. He started trading with the Middle East countries, using that Navy as a arm. So he was a great social reformer. He reconverted one Hindu Raja who had become a Muslim, and then gave his daughter to him, which was unknown in that period. In that period, if somebody left Hinduism, he was gone. All the doors were closed to him. But he not only brought that Raja back, he gave him his daughter. He gave his daughter in marriage to his son. So Shivaji was a great social reformer also. So Shivaji can qualify as the greatest Indian of 1,000 years because his diplomacy. When I read about his diplomacy, it is top class. The way he fought three Muslim powers at one time: Mughals, Bijapur, and Golconda, and the way he played one against the other and increased his power. It is a masterpiece of diplomacy, which is straight away drawn from Krishnaniti and Chanakyaniti.
No, I think when a person is more dharmic, then he can have more options available, and when you're not dharmic,
Absolutely.
then naturally the options are less. Also,
Absolutely. I agree with you.
and also the forts that he has built in the water. I think they are
Pardon?
architectural. The forts that he built in the water, navy, and the forts he has built, this is remarkable. I think very less mention has been there or taught to the people of India that those forts still exist and they're as strong as when they were built. So
No, no. He I mean, in those days, a strong navy meant forts uh, in the sea, and he built such forts and with great skill, because to build any building in the middle of the sea is a very difficult task, and they have lasted till this day. I don't know what kind of material he used,
yeah,
but then he had this ability to inspire people. Like one of the forts, Sindhudurg, on the first day, Sindhudurg was built from the plunder which he procured from Surat. It was used to build two places, his capital Raigad and this fort called Sindhudurg. In this fort, Shivaji on the first day used his own hands to work with the soldiers. I mean, he worked as a mason for some time on the first day, to set an example that a soldier of his army, when he is not fighting, he has to do other things also. The soldiers in that fort became workers to build the fort. This was a great vision, great vision. Because earlier one would think, I am a soldier. Why should I do other work? He said, no, a soldier will have to be all rounder. And to set an example, on the first day, he himself used his hands as a mason to build that fort.
I think
And there
this
is a temple. Because of that, there is a temple in Sindhudurg, a temple dedicated to Shivaji, because he had worked in that fort with his own hands on the first day. Yeah.
this kind of example has definitely allowed him to recruit more soldiers who are Hindu origin who are working for the Mughal Empire. So most of them had deserted
Yes.
Mughal Empire and joined him because they considered him kind as well as strong. So one question that comes to my mind
Right.
is that since Shivaji Maharaj himself was strong, so therefore he was able to dictate his own terms with other people. And today, if India is a strong country now, and if India can use their strength to dictate terms favorable, and at least build Indian Hindavi Rajya from where Shivaji Maharaj used to rule, is it possible now or no?
No, yeah. You see, I have written two books on the Prime Minister of India, on his administration. As an administrator, I have seen many. I have seen there are many facets of the present Prime Minister of India, where I think that he is taking inspiration from Shivaji. Like his step to uh, remove middlemen between the government and the and beneficiaries, which is the poor people, the common population. It is straight away drawn from Shivaji. When Shivaji became full-fledged ruler, he removed the middlemen and established direct contact with the farmers, with the common people, and that is what I think the present Prime Minister has done. He has removed middlemen and curbed middleman culture in Delhi in a big way, and therefore I think he is drawing inspiration from Shivaji in many ways. Yeah.
So one of the fascinating things about Shivaji Maharaj was he had a plan. He was a very good planner. Not only he knew about the geography, but he also had the dharmic orientation. So conviction was very strong, and at the same time he had a plan. And without a plan, you cannot attain such success. It's not
Now,
possible.
I will give you a very good example on that. You will be very happy to note. There is a great episode of Shivaji in which he killed a Bijapuri Muslim general called Afzal Khan. People say he killed him with treachery, but most historians see it differently. Jajwan Sarkar says that had he not killed Afzal Khan with what you call steel claws, tiger claws rather. You wear them as rings. They look like rings, but here there are tiger claws here of steel. So when they were meeting and embracing each other, Afzal Khan tried to, uh, attacked him with his knife from after taking him in his grip, because he was a huge fellow. Shivaji was very, as compared to him, very his height was less. So he took him in his grip and he tried to, but Shivaji was wearing a steel armor. So those blows rendered, were rendered useless. But Shivaji, in the meantime, he was carrying this Wagnak with him, and there was one dagger also here on his left hand. He pulled out those. He put he pierced them in his bowel, and tore open his bowels and killed him. Afzal Khan. So Afzal Khan is a great example, actually, of what to expect from Shivaji if you go after him. Afzal Khan had broken temples before he came to meet Shivaji, and he set up this meeting because Shivaji had gone into upper hills of Western Ghats, and he knew that once you go on the top of those hills, it's very difficult to catch. So he changed his strategy and he called Shivaji by a very sweet language. But Shivaji knew his original game, and Shivaji killed him before he could kill him. So Shivaji, by this, he set an example of what to expect from him. If you try to play, wrong with him, if you try to deceive him, Achha, what was your original question, Aditya ji?
About the planning aspect, that he was a great planner.
Now, you see, nobody, till Shivaji killed him, all his generals were fearing that how will we tackle this demon, because his height was almost 7 feet. So, and he was known for his treachery, he was known for his demonic traits. So after this episode, his generals asked him, that Maharaj, please tell us, how did you kill this demon? He said, planning. The first word he used was planning. Niyojan. He said, when I came to know that Afzal Khan has been sent against me, I did a thorough study of Afzal Khan. I, in the guise of a common man, I went and saw him personally, and he saw his strength also. At that time, he said that, there was one cannon which was being carried, and it got entangled with a stone, a big stone, and the soldiers are unable to remove it. So he took the chain by which the cannon was being pulled, put it on his shoulders, and overcame. He pulled out that cannon, from that spot where it was entangled with a stone. He said, I saw this and I knew what to expect from him. So he said, Shivaji, Afzal Khan's killing was example of great, apart from bravery, it was a great example of my planning. So everything he is to do is to plan. And I think our present Prime Minister also is a great planner. In the smallest things he is doing, he will plan it one day in advance.
Anyone who reads Ramayana and Mahabharata will understand the importance of planning. Bhagwan Ram planned for some time before he attacked Ravan. Yudhishthir planned for 12 years and 13 years to prepare to take back his kingdom. It's all about planning.
Absolutely.
And Shivaji Maharaj had this vision of Hindavi Rajya. So what was the basis of that vision of Hindavi Rajya?
The Hindavi Rajya was, you see, this whole Hindutva, Hindavi Rajya has been very wrongly interpreted by left historians and by radical Muslim historians. Hindu Swarajya means a kingdom based on Hindu ethos, but giving full freedom to every religion, every caste. Uh, a kingdom which will not discriminate between people on the basis of caste, creed, and religion. So that is Hindu Swarajya, which has been wrongly interpreted by historians. And that is connected with Hindutva of Savarkar. Veer Savarkar was a great follower of Shivaji, and a great freedom fighter. He spoke about Hindutva, which is Hindu Rashtra. Same Hindu Swarajya, kingdom based on Hindu ethos. But Hindu ethos is what? Hindu ethos is giving equal treatment to all and no discrimination on the basis of religion.
See, Hindus have, generally Muslims have not been very kind, especially the Muslim invaders have not been kind to Hindus. And even today, we see that the Hindus are persecuted in all the lands controlled by them: Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all these lands which are Hindu lands. Now, when the Hindus were ruling, Muslims were free to practice their faith. But when Muslims are ruling, Hindus have no rights in all these lands.
Aditya, I don't really proper to generalize, because Afghanistan, there is a very wide section of liberal Muslim population. Same with Bangladesh. In Pakistan also, there is a section of people who are quite liberal, But then the degree of Muslim fanaticism is now increasing. There is no doubt, nobody can deny it.
If we just see the numbers, we see the numbers and we can make it out. The numbers are 21% in 1971, 28% 1971 in Bangladesh. And then today is only 7% or 9%. And in Pakistan, it was 14%, 15%. And now it is less than 2%. So numbers don't lie. Afghanistan, the Hindu population in 900 AD was majority, 85% Hindus. And today is 100 families. That's it. Not a single temple left there.
I agree with you.
So numbers don't
But
lie.
I'm just trying to be fair to those Muslims who are not part of this.
Yeah.
The numbers might be smaller, as you said.
But the numbers don't lie. So now coming back to Shivaji Maharaj, then
No, we're talking about today's this. Today Afghanistan has a liberal element which is quite large, and that's why this fight is going on between Talibanis and non-Talibanis in Afghanistan.
Yeah, we have a lot of Afghani students who attend our courses, so we know that they love Hinduism in a big way. But I'm talking about those lands which is large percentage of Indian Hindu history is there. Ancient
It
Hindu
has come now. There is no doubt.
It's wiped out. So
And this liberal element in Muslim community is very recent.
yeah, but the
200, 300 years ago, it is quite recent.
But the fact is, it's difficult to identify. So you can have, it's difficult to identify who is what. So we have to just go by the general actions. Okay, so we do not know. So anyway, coming back to Shivaji Maharaj, in Shivaji Maharaj's philosophy, when we see Tukaram playing a very important role, and so Tukaram, Sant Gyaneshwar, and Ramdas. And so, what was the period in which they influenced Shivaji Maharaj's life?
Tukaram was his contemporary. Swami Ramdas Swami was also his contemporary, but the impression which is given by historians that he was his guru from day one is not correct. He became his guru quite later in his life when Shivaji had become a full-fledged ruler. Of course, this whole Shivaji took up a campaign after he became Soviet king to conquer South. That was inspired by Ramdas Swami, which is called Dakshin Digvijay. I mean, it increased the length of this kingdom by almost 700 kilometers, 800 kilometers. So, Tukaram had a great influence on him because Tukaram is part of Bhakti movement. Bhakti movement has played a key role in bringing equality in Hindu religion. You see, caste was a division of labor, but it became a tool to persecute lower caste Hindus on the part of upper caste Hindus, This was a later perversion. I think this perversion has also got to do with Muslim invasion. I don't think this perversion was there in a greater degree, in big degree, before Muslims came. You get my point? So, uh, Bhakti movement had a great impact on Shivaji. And therefore, if you see that Shivaji tried to turn every Hindu community into a fighter community. And I have gone further, I have linked even Baba Saheb Ambedkar's rise. Baba Saheb Ambedkar is the maker of Indian Constitution and a great fighter for persecuted Hindus, we got Ambedkar. There is a link with Shivaji. Because it was Shivaji who turned Ambedkar's community called Dalit community called Mahar into fighters. Mahars used to defend the lower part of the hill forts of Shivaji. When Britishers took over, they found Mahars very brave and obedient. So they formed a regiment called Mahar Regiment, Army Regiment. Ambedkar's father was a soldier in Mahar Regiment. And I doubt, had Ambedkar's father not been a soldier, he would ever become a leader of the stature he could become, and he could ever wage a fight against Dalit persecution as the way he did. I think the inspiration, that fighting spirit came from his father. And his father was in Mahar Regiment because Mahar was turned into fighters by Shivaji.
Mhm. So a lot of military tradition has been there with Shivaji Maharaj, and it also brings to the point that Narad Muni tells Yudhishthir that without military strength, Sanatan Dharma cannot be spread. So
Absolutely.
in today's time, when the leftist media propaganda is to defang any opposition to them, defang us. Like they want to defang, like Hindus should not protest, they're secular, Hindus should be secular. And all this propaganda is there through the leftist media. Do you think that ever Indian government realizes the importance of military power in spreading forth the Sanatan Dharma?
I think the present government is doing so. I think it is moving in that direction.
Because all
the thing now is protecting Sanatan Dharma, there is nothing communal about it. Sanatan Dharma itself is a very Catholic concept, liberal concept, which invites all good things from even other religions,
Mhm.
So to protect Sanatan Dharma is the duty of India, which gave Pakistan to Muslim in the name of Islam. So now at least we should have a right to protect our religion and our Sanatan Dharma, nothing wrong about it.
So if people gave Pakistan away, so if Pakistan is continuing the same propaganda, they are saying Indians to have a large heart, give us more land. How much more land India can give now?
No, Pakistan it's based on an Islamic concept, which is to turn the entire world into Islam. So naturally, it is doing its job. We were not doing our job so far. That is the problem.
So
Pakistan was doing what it was supposed to do.
So when will we do our job by asking?
Now we are not doing that job.
No, when will we do our job of asking the rest of the Pakistan and Afghanistan back?
It is God who ordains everything, and God willing, that day will come. Well, it is our country, basically it is our land. And the worst part is that Pakistan, after becoming independent, has not kept friendly relations with us. They're all the time they are trying to capture our land and spread terrorism. So Pakistan has lost the right, as I feel as a citizen of India, Pakistan has lost the right to seek I would say, clemency from India. It has crossed all limits of, of tolerance. You know, even today it is organizing terrorist attacks in Kashmir. So Pakistan has lost the right, basically.
So when the Americans see the history of Shivaji Maharaj and India talks about peace with Pakistan, the Americans are more confused. What does India want?
Pardon?
When,
Pardon?
when Americans see the history of Shivaji Maharaj and India is always talking about peace and Pakistan is always attacking, the Americans are confused. They're saying these people are not following their dharma. What is happening?
That is a fact. That is the history. That is the history of course. I can say during Mrs. Gandhi's period, we tried to take we tried to assert ourselves. But there also we lacked from a lack of we suffered from a lack of vision. In Shimla Agreement, for example, 1971, we could have forced Bhutto to give POK back to us, Pak occupied Kashmir. We did not do. On the contrary, we had captured some parts of Sindh in 1971 war, and our rule was there on those three districts for almost it was there for almost sub districts for almost 9 months, and Mrs. Gandhi gave it back in spite of such a great victory, in spite of holding 93,000 Pakistani soldiers as captives. We could not take back POK. We gave the land which we had won. In 65 war also same thing happened. 65 war, we were about to capture Lahore. We did not capture Lahore. On the contrary, we gave that land back which we had won, between Amritsar and Lahore. What nonsense, I mean, they committed blunders.
So this is a result of irresolute intelligence, adharmic behavior, and also it
No,
was
this has to do with something I'll tell you. You see, Godse murdering Gandhiji, was turned into an opportunity by the leftist and by the pacifist forces, and they thrust upon this country a particular culture, which would not have happened had Gandhiji been alive. Gandhi's murder by Godse, unfortunate, condemnable, was used by the rulers who ruled this country in the initial period to thrust upon this country a particular culture.
it's called victimhood.
You can imagine that partition happened because of the policy of Muslim appeasement. Correct? I strongly believe that. Had we not indulged in Muslim appeasement, Pakistan would not have happened. Correct? And within 10 years of India's independence, in 57, the then ruling party in Delhi forged an alliance with Muslim League in Kerala to defeat, of course, communists.
Yeah, we'll come
But
back
they forged an alliance with the same people who had caused India's partition. This would not have happened had Gandhiji not been killed.
No, we'll come back to this topic separately, but we'll end this session on Shivaji Maharaj. I think a lot of lessons need to be learned from his life and history, so that the Indian politicians do not make more mistakes. Already they have done many, and
I think Shivaji's concepts have to be openly propagated by India as of now. If India wants to become a Vishwaguru, if India wants to fight fanatical forces, then it is Shivaji's strategy only which can help India achieve these objectives. So it should be part of curriculum, I would say. Because, I'll tell you one thing. In Shivaji's kingdom, there was no discrimination on the basis of religion. So even if India says India is a secular country, Shivaji was a secular ruler.
so
You get my point? Shivaji was a secular ruler.
So I, for the sake of time, we are saying great lessons need to be learned from Shivaji Maharaj. The right history needs to be taught, and also the Stockholm syndrome of Hindus need to be removed, because Stockholm syndrome is preventing them from accepting aggressors as lenient, because this is what is happening in the Jewish community also, and also the concept of dharma in politics, which Shivaji Maharaj used with such a wonderful way, has to be brought in to bring strong decision making power in critical situations. And I think I'll commend the Indian government, and through you, you are part of it. That through you, that it's a great
My
initiative.
job is quite different. My job is actually, I am in a very different job. I am a judge right now.
Uh,
Actually, I am supposed to limit my public engagement. But I personally think that I will not comment on politics of the day. But as being a student of history, being a student of uh, you know, uh, you know, I have studied radical Islam also, radical Islamic movements. I have studied Savarkar so well. So, in spite of being in the government and in spite of being in a position where I'm a judge, I'm actually now a judge. So I have to limit my public engagement, which I have done. But I have decided, as a matter of conviction, that I will continue to comment on issues to do with India's security, basically history, culture. I will not comment on politics.
so thank you, Udaji, for coming on the show, and thank you, viewers, for watching it. Do comment on the YouTube comment section and let us know how you feel. And we'll come back with Udaji with more exciting content, and we'll see you again. Namaskar. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaskar.